Tree Talking Time is brought to you by Conkey's Outdoors and Stone Creek Hound Supply. Be sure to check them out for all your hound hunting needs. Welcome to Tree Talking Time, where we talk all things tree dogs, from the smallest feists to the largest hounds, treating squirrels to bears and everything in between. And from time to time, we might even run a little fast game.
The nice thing for me is, my family has been involved with the original Mountain Cur dogs and the Cur dogs for several years.
Just several.
Yeah. Was luckier than probably most trying to get into the Cur dogs and the hunting. My grandpa Chester Clark, him and Robert Kimmer and all the guys were always good friends and raised up together. And
okay,
my parents, Donnie and Mary Clark, raised several good dogs. I mean, it's still today. They haven't really been breeding for several years now, and about every pedigree that you see, there's still several of their dogs that came from their kennel from it. And to me, that's probably the biggest thing for me. It kept me involved in it. The direction that they always took in it is the same that I believe in today. They always look for the kind of all-around dog, not just one thing or singular. And to me, a lot of it seems like we're kind of pushing more that direction. Everybody has a dog just for squirrel or just for coon hunting, and my grandpa always said the same thing. I always, to me, one of the funniest things I ever hear is the fact that, it doesn't have to be pretty to tree. And I remember my grandpa telling a guy it sure doesn't have to be ugly to tree too,
Yeah.
And, to me, when you're breeding, to have something that you can take out during the daytime and tree squirrels and go at night and tree, coon and good enough to put on the bench show. That should be what you strive for. And, I think that the line that my grandpa, my parents, and myself today always look at is that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, there's been several dogs that we, would take. And, to me, a lot of people don't think, but the combination award, I think it still is always one of my biggest goals going to a hunt.
Okay.
It just proves that you're still trying to breed for the all-around Mountain Cur.
Mm-hmm.
These dogs were known for that.
Oh, for sure.
And I just seen a guy the other day, he posted, wanted some pedigree, and there was a lot of dogs, and sent him, I haven't looked at my, the Castle Hill Mountain Cur page for a long time. And it's crazy how many dogs that did good. And it, like I said, is in today's lineage of dogs that are being pushed. And, again, I'm one where you never take credit for another man's work, but it's always nice to know that the breeding that he's working with came from, our family.
Mm-hmm.
You see a lot of them, and, Bonnie Betty, right, is probably one of the biggest known around. And, there's a ton of big dogs that go back to her. And, and her reputation herself on how friendly she was. So a lot of people always, she was unique, and, she necessarily wasn't mean, but she definitely knew who owned her.
Okay.
I remember it's been so long, can't tell you the year, but to me, that was hauling her. I kept her probably a year, took her to several big hunts, won a lot with her, and she'd bite me weekly.
That's funny.
It was, and not just because, it was just her deal. And she wasn't aggressive at no means. She was a very, nice dog, good, but she would do it. She knew my dad owned her.
Yeah.
And it was one, I could take her down there a week and she was his, and it was funny. She just knew who she belonged to, and she was unique, but producing wise, she was, to me, one of the better producers we had. I mean, the Junior Jukebox was, I always thought Junior Jukebox didn't get the credit probably he deserved, on breeding. But to me, it always amazed me. It didn't, a lot of dogs make their name off one or two crosses.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it didn't matter what you bred him to. I mean, I still have that lineage today. And I actually have a female called Trixie, and I took her back to that line again. It was a Joe Money Grand pup.
Okay.
But it goes back to that Junior Jukebox. And I mean, to me, they always did anything you wanted them to. I mean, we sold them for some, big game and squirrel, coon, coyote, street dogs. I mean, they just was easy to do. They looked good doing it, and probably were my favorite.
Okay. Well, before we get too far into this, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the Cur dogs have figured out who we're talking to, but in case somebody's not familiar with you, Nick, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yep, I'm Nick Clark, and from Clark's Mountain Curs, and again, I've already talked. Came from a good line of family that has been involved in the Cur dog world for a long time, and parents Donnie and Mary Clark, and we're out of Central Missouri, and still love these dogs today, and always have planned to do it, and my kids are involved in it, and always want to keep other people getting involved in it.
That's awesome that your kids are involved. And I didn't know that your grandfather had them too. Obviously, I knew your parents had them. I kind of came up into the Cur dog world in, mid 2000s, and Squirrel Dog Central was hot and heavy, and your parents had probably one of the better websites in the Cur dog game, and I loved looking at it. They had a lot of historical pictures. They always kept, fairly current pictures of their dogs. Every time they raised a litter of puppies, they were putting puppy pictures on. And like I said, that website was probably one of the best there was at the time.
And like I said, I hadn't looked at it for a long time until just the other day. And I mean, it just reminds you, some of the dogs that have went through that.
Yeah.
The opportunities. And I mean, you always hear that you're lucky to have that one good dog in a lifetime, right? And like I said, I talk to people, I've been lucky. I've had, that opportunity to hunt and handle, probably 30.
Wow. That's awesome.
And, and I mean, like I said, it has made a good difference. And like I said, I give a lot of credit to my parents for, making sure that they improved the breed and kept it going. And for, myself, I mean, like I said, probably my two favorite, it's kind of hard to narrow it down to two, but, the two-toed Joe dog that I owned, I mean, I'm more of a coon hunter. I squirrel hunt a lot, but I always enjoy being out at night. And Joe was just a coon dog. A lot of people say that, the Cur dog's not a coon dog. And I mean, he would disprove people wrong, night after night. And he was easy to handle, and we'd hunt in snow, rain, and he just treated it. He was probably the most consistent dog I've ever owned. I mean, you can hunt with a dog, one night they'd look better than him because they hunted with him 3 or 4 nights. And my dad and I, for several years, we'd go up North Missouri and camp, just find a spot to camp for a week or two, and we'd hunt. And, we'd, especially when everybody was a little younger, we'd hunt basically when it got dark till the sun started coming up. And after 4 or 5 days, a lot of dogs wouldn't get out of the box, and Joe just acted like it was the first night.
Nice.
He was just consistent and produced a lot of nice puppies out there. And I mean, the Joe and Super Freak cross was probably one of my, I actually have a female on the place right now. She's 16.
Wow.
And out of that cross, and still looks like she's 10. I mean, she's a nice dog. And, like I said, had pups. Actually, the pup I went back, I was telling you I bred Trixie to, is out of her.
Okay.
Too. So, like I said, it's trying to get back in there. And then of course, everybody, especially recently, probably the most, common dog was the Bella female. I mean, me and Daniel George had Bella, and we hauled her over, and for competition, by far probably one of the better dogs I've ever had. She was easy to hunt, and she was just the better the dog that you put her in the woods with, she just was better. And I hauled her several states and stuff like that, and on the 50th cast we had her in, she got beat.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, ended up with 11 open world titles, and I think 12 reserve world titles, and like that had, the kids hunted her at the youth world and stuff like that, and had several of them, and the state titles and stuff like that, couldn't even count them anymore. But she was just, she had a 3-year run that was pretty impressive. And, like I said, it probably wouldn't have mattered who handled her. She was easy. A lot of dogs, you kind of got to figure them out. And, I mean, if she treed, she was treed.
That's good.
I mean, she was
now, what was she out of?
Ones. She went back to so she had a little Junior Jukebox in it, and the Bonnie Betty, Liar. We had the dog that was called Trouble with the Truth, Liar.
Yeah.
And that's kind of her lineage.
Okay.
So, I mean, she was and she was the same deal. I mean, she, won the bench show, won the score hunt, I mean, she was kind of that desirable dog that, for me, what I want. You could take her in the morning, win, take her in the night, and win the bench.
Yeah.
I mean, she was that all around dog, and to me, like I said, there's several, right? When you go to these hunts, you see some super nice dogs out there, and these guys, they put a ton of effort and time in them, and when you get one that is just does it like they're supposed to, it's super nice. And I mean, it's not as easy as what it looks like. You go to these hunts and you kind of wonder how these guys get these dogs, and it's just a lot of time.
Oh yeah. But what I will say is, like, your family, like you said, consistently had dogs that were winning, consistently had, tailgates full. Your coon season pictures were always incredible. And it was just time and time again, different dogs. Even you're saying, like, the breeding on your dogs. Some of your dogs were bred kind of differently, and your parents weren't afraid to kind of cross some different lines up, but it seemed to really work for them.
Yeah, and that's when I've talked to anybody about breeding, the one thing that, I learned and understood where a lot of people struggle with is, my parents proved that you find what works and you work, right? I mean, again, the reason that you hear the Streak, the Busher, all these names, there's a reason, right? I mean, because they've proved themselves, and to try to get one-sided, right?
Yeah.
Jukebox, and I mean, we had a huge success of crossing Jukebox on Busher and Busher on Streak and Streak on and that's what my parents they had a lot of different females, like you said, a lot of different breeding, and they worked when they found what worked. They stayed there. I've met several people like, they'll have a breeding and have some pups, and then they all are just super dogs, and they go somewhere else. And to me, if it worked, and it's worked exactly like expected, I mean, it's silly to go away. And that's what, to me, the biggest thing, right? That my family, they didn't get stuck on one direction. They understood enough that there's reasons why the dogs that and I mean, when you go to places, the dogs that are winning, there's a reason. Them guys are putting the effort, and they did the same thing. They've found what worked, and we all know in every type of sport industry, there's the jealousies and the stuff like that. And
what? There's jealousy in this sport?
That's right. But you just get over that. And I mean, if somebody, again, right, if you can improve what you have with somebody else's help, I mean, it's silly not to do it instead of staying on the fence. And I mean, you see a lot of people doing I've been one. I'm a huge supporter of the OMSBA. I know there's always been a lot of talk and a lot of people, the crosses and the stuff like that. I mean, there's a ton of good ones.
Yeah.
But I mean, to me, it's a gamble, right? I mean, it's one of them deals. And again, once some guys kind of find out what works and stuff, it tends to work better. But to me, when my parents, I mean, they knew what was working and what did, and when you stayed in that and you didn't go out of that, the chance of having puppies that was easier starter and not a professional handler starter, is and I mean, we all know, right? Everybody's opinion of what a good dog and what a bad dog is. Probably one of my, I had a dog that's called Let Her Rip, and he kind of went through. Floyd Sanders had bought him and stuff when he was young. One of my friends owed a guy a puppy, and he didn't have any puppies. And the guy called me one time and he goes, well, I don't know if I'm ever. And Roxy, which was Two-Toe Joe, and Bubba Shot the Boot, which was out of the Pistol Pete from my Uncle Teddy. I had bred her to Liar, Trouble with the Truth, and I told this guy, I said, "Well, I'll just give you a pup, and that way we'll be, you'll be square with a buddy, and we'll go on." Well, when this pup was probably 6-7 months old, he called me and he said, "This dog is no good." He said he won't listen, won't go. He just runs off and goes, and he wanted rid of him. And I said, "Well, I'll come get him and see." And wasn't for sure what I was going to do with it. And the super freak female was extremely good, and she was probably older, probably 8 or so at that time. So we've been just pleasure hunting sheep tree with other dogs pretty easy. And I turned him loose, and I reached down to turn her loose, and I looked up, and I'm standing in a 40-acre field, and he's gone. I mean, this pup is just gone. And I'm like, well, maybe he will just run off, right? And well, after a few seconds, he trees. Freak goes up there, trees with him. In about a minute, he peels out and leaves. I go up there, they have a squirrel. Well, time I get done with that, he's treed again and goes, it's kind of the same deal. And it's like, I mean, he didn't know his name. You couldn't call him, whatever. Long story short, when he was 11 months old, I won the World Squirrel Hunt, World Coon Hunt, World Bench Show with him.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, he was super nice, but it's one where, again, it just kind of shows, one person wants a dog that really goes, and another one, they don't want to walk so far and they don't want to go. And so sometimes, you got to be really open-minded when you talk to people. What they consider a good dog is different than what I consider a good dog.
For sure.
Well,
it's very subjective.
Yes. And I mean, it's one where sometimes, having the variety is a good thing. And I mean, to me, the support of the sport in itself is huge. I mean, we've all been in it long enough to know that, you see clubs come up and split up and do it. And, we see all the deals. And I mean, if we don't support each other, right? I mean, we know it's getting harder and harder as it is anyway. For me, probably one of the accomplishments for myself was, we held the youth world hunt for years. And I mean, to me, I enjoyed it as probably as much as anything. And the Kovacs, Amy and Ray and them guys, they started it in Weldon Springs and held it for 3 or 4 years. And I don't remember what caused them to stop. And, we reached out to them and asked if they minded. We did. And, Everett Hurley and myself and Eddie Stevens, we jumped on it and helped with my parents and stuff. And I mean, we had, several hunts that, we was putting out, 55, 65 kids in the morning and, 30, 35 at night.
That's impressive.
From little big kids and olds. And I mean, it was just good. And I, always thought it's important to keep the next generations moving forward to keep the sport alive. And I mean, we definitely have enough, amongst us adults that, like I said, that keeps it rough. And the more the kids got involved, and probably it's been 4 years, I think, is the last one we put on. My college and all that stuff with my kids definitely changed it. And even myself, it's harder to hunt as much. And, you talked about like our coon pictures and stuff like that at the end of the year. And I still, like, I very rare missed a night of coon hunting, but, there's no reason to go out as much as there was. And I mean, we used to, hunt every night and weekends almost all night.
Yeah.
Some of the people would hunt with me, ask me how I did it, and I just told them for 2 months I was tired. So, I mean, it's, and, like I said, I've got an opportunity, this sport has definitely gave me an opportunity to meet, several people that, I highly respect. And, some of them may think I don't respect them, but, I 100% do. The, different views and opinions is always a good thing for every sport. And, we have them. And, like I said, I've, my parents instilled in me the fact that, again, I understand that there's differences in what people think are a good dog, bad dog, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. And, I mean, try to be honest. And, like I said, I never, to me, if me and you hunted and you had the better dog and it beat me, it never hurt my feelings. I mean, like I said, I think a lot of people are like that. I mean, when we go to them, if we're going to get beat, we'd rather get beat watching the dog do the work. And I mean, I think it's important for a lot of people to understand that, and everybody wants to win. I mean, but at the same time, if you can watch a dog really do its thing, it's impressive to watch some of these dogs.
Yep. Conkey's Outdoors is proud to be a sponsor of Tree Talking Time. Family, hunting, tradition is the Conkey's motto. They understand the importance of passing down the tradition of hound hunting. They are a family-owned business that treats you like family. They also understand the importance of having the gear you need when you need it. Conkey's carries everything for your next hunt, and it ships to your door quick. They also offer great warranties on all tracking systems and financing options. Check them out at conkeys.com. You can also use the code TreeTalkingTime5 in all caps to save as well. How many dogs do you keep now, and like kind of what direction are you going with your dogs nowadays as far as breeding and stuff? Like,
so I mean, I got 7, which is too many. I was dog poor, and like I said, with the girls going to college, we built a house. I kind of I started 2 or 3 pups and would let somebody else take them while we was going through this, and kind of let all my dogs get old. The Trixie female, so the main dog that I've had for the last few years is Banner, the jukebox Banner from, Randy Gardner.
Okay.
And, he's out of the iPod and Babe.
Okay.
And when he was little, they tried to make him a squirrel dog, and he'd rather tree old coon dens than he would squirrel, and which fit more in my alley. So I've had him forever. But, since he's been a year old, and he's 10 this year, and it's like, how did they get so fast? But I have a pup out of him that is, she's 5.
Okay.
Trixie female is 5, and she's the one that, like I said, I bred back to a dog called Rock, which is out of Joe Money and Two-Toe Joe, which Joe Money's out Two-Toe Joe and Bella. And so, and Trixie will go back to, Banner, and then the lineage was Bella and not Bella, Betty, Bonnie Betty in that line.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the direction is kind of that. I got another young female that's out of Trixie, and then I have another male and another female that's a little over a year that is banner gan pups, but a little bit of junior jukebox in them. The one female, the Duke dog that Dad had, that kind of his last dog that he really competition hunted quite a bit versus the second Betty.
Okay.
It's out of him, and so which will also have the Bonnie Betty in that deal. So I mean, I'm trying to keep a little bit of that what we've had in the past, and the again, if I'd rather coon hunt, but again, both all these I've been squirrel hunting them and coon hunting. They're doing decent. We got an 8-year-old boy, and like I said, the girls have been in college. I was getting harder to keep up with some of these younger guys. I mean, even I'm not that old yet, but it's still harder to. But I'd still like to get out and get one going where I can go to the hunts again. And like I said, to me, a lot of people think that they don't want to hunt, but I mean, you learn a lot. I mean, it's a good opportunity, and like I said, and you see dogs that impress you, and when you hunt around the house, it's great, and it's probably a little bit more enjoyable, not with any stress to it. But I mean, you learn a lot by getting out and about and seeing what's out there and keeping up with and the the elimination hunt style has probably made it harder for a lot of people. I'm not against it. I like it, and I don't. And well, to me, like I said, I kind of told you earlier, the combination award is probably my thing with the cur dogs for sure.
Yeah.
And, to me, that all around, well, the elimination style, it's hard. I mean, most people couldn't go 3 or 4 times on a squirrel hunt and do it again at night and then travel. And, I mean, where we're at, I mean, a lot of times we're traveling 6 to how many hours to the first hunt.
Okay.
So, I mean, we normally do it when you do that, which the elimination style, there's a lot of plus to it. And I mean, it adds to me a little bit more excitement to the end of it for sure. But I still have, again, I know when my grandpa got where he really couldn't go, he still wanted to be involved, and the bench show was just important to him at that time then because he couldn't go.
Yep.
My mom was always that way. She hunted for years and years, and when she couldn't go, and to me, it's easier to get the rest of the people, right? We get again. If I had a choice, we had to do one thing was coon hunt.
Yeah.
But I mean, I always, when we put on the hunts and stuff like that, I put as much effort. The awards that we gave, the stuff that we did was the same for a treeing contest, for a bench show. It was the coon and squirrel, because I mean, to me, it may not be important to one guy, but it's important to another one.
Yeah.
And the upcoming generations normally ain't starting off in the woods, especially when we're making these hunts bigger and type of hunts where it's harder to learn. There's a lot less family style oriented hunts than what there used to be when I was young.
Yeah.
I mean, used to, even around here, there were 6, 7 clubs, and you'd go there, and there wasn't hundreds of dogs, but a lot of times there was 18 to 25 dogs, and people was there more to enjoy it. And a lot of times when you drew a kid or somebody that was getting into the sport, there was more help than learn the rules on the fly. People would help out, and to me, that's where you kind of learn, and that's where you grow up into doing the big ones. And you need both styles, right? I mean, we want the bigger end hunts for sure, and I mean, they're great for our sport, and I mean, they're definitely, some of these, the big money hunts has been pretty impressive.
Oh, for sure.
And, and when we hunted the NSD and the USD, and, to me, what was always impressive, when you went there, any dog could win it. I mean, everybody was solid, and, most of the time everybody got along and stuff. And because, you didn't have a range of quality of dogs, normally they were all pretty top.
Exactly.
But to me, we still need those hunts where the guy can take his pup that ain't very good and not going to want to come back because,
Yeah.
the result of it either.
No, and like you
You
were
know,
saying about like the bench show and the treeing contest being important. What's funny is, this week my son, he's 7. He's got a thing at school, like, and he gets to take something in every day to kind of tell about himself. Well, today he picked a trophy he won at a bench show, and because it's actually a pretty nice little trophy, and it means a lot to him. He won it when he was 3 or 4 years old. He didn't know what he was doing. It really isn't. It was more of a participation thing, and I know a lot of people balk at that, but to a 4-year-old, and even now that he's 7, that means a lot to him, and he really has fond memories of going to that event. And so, enough so that he took it to school today to show his class. And I think, like you said, there's a lot of young and up and coming people, or a lot of older people that's their connection to the sport. They don't have a dog that they can go compete in an NSD or USDC hunt. So it is still important.
Yeah, and I 100% believe it, and I always will. And like I said, we want to do a good job of supporting, like you said, the upcoming homes beyond. How many people show up there? That has they could tell you story after story after story because they did it way before we did.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, we don't want to eliminate them people coming to the hunt. And I mean, to me, Eldora, it's a prime example. It always had been a big hunt forever. They added the 3-dog elimination. We're used to, you come to that clubhouse, there'd be 200 people in that clubhouse waiting for the dog.
Yeah.
And, to me, when you go to the hunts and, a lot of times, you'd come back and there'd be 50, 60 people hanging around. And I mean, to me, that's important. I mean, we want to make sure that it's just more than about, the hunt itself.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the future of it and the success of it. And I mean, again, we don't have to agree with everybody on style and what we think is a good dog. And, there's a lot of people that just want a dog that they can enjoy and go to the woods with. And I mean, even when I'm competition hunting and we was doing, good and stuff like that, my favorite time was still going out in the woods and just not having to worry, not worrying about time and whatever, and just listening to the dog and watch him do his good stuff. And I had a friend, now that I hunted with for several years. I tried to get him to hunt with me for 2 or 3 years, and he never would. And one day I was at a restaurant, and he came in and sat down with me and talked to him. I was like, "Dude, hunt with me." He goes, "Man, he said you're too serious about it. And I was like, "You ain't hunted with me." It's like, no, I said it's a good time. So when he hunted, he's like, "Well," he said, "I just figured, since you was doing all the competition hunts that, he had at the time a decent dog, but not a great dog, and he was worried that all I was going to do is critique his dog,
Mm-hmm.
and then he ended up having a pup. He got one of the Bella and Two-Toe Joe puppies called Ruger. In competition hunting, some did really well. I mean, he won a world title with him. And,
nice.
but, I mean, he kind of learned, too, that, you can do both, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's important to to not make it so serious and to enjoy it and have a good time. Like I said, I've got the opportunity to hunt and spend time in the woods with guys that, if I didn't do it, I'd have never got to meet them or, like you said, hear all the stories.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ask a lot of the guys, especially even at the competition hunt, probably with some of the better times is after the hunt when you're sitting around and you're hearing these stories, right?
Yeah.
You're hearing about stuff they did or, what their grandpa told them or the guy that, where and how they got involved in the sport.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to me, that's always been my goal. And, I gave a lot of puppies away over the years and to kids growing up and wanting into it. And I mean, I still today think it's important. It can't be a money game. It has to be as you enjoy it and you want to. And the direction that I always go is kind of like I said, is trying to breed for that dog that will do all of it. You know, and I mean, that's where I want to be.
No, I like that because I think, like you said, the OMCBA dogs have, especially since the bigger money has come into it, you've seen a big push for a squirrel dog and exclusively a squirrel dog, and you know, you don't see the combination dogs that you used to. And I'm not saying the guys don't coon hunt, but I think the coon hunting side has gotten so competitive as well, and squirrel hunting's gotten so competitive, so they've kind of pushed in those directions where you don't see as many, at least it's not talked about as much if they are there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, you know, with the style, the elimination stuff, you know, you kind of got to pick a direction, right? And it's hard to do both, especially at once. And, you know, because again, even for a dog, I mean, when you go out that much, but for a lot of people, and like I said, you do limit the number of people that can go out, you know, like I said, 2 or 3 times daytime and 2 or 3 times at night. And, you know, a lot of these dogs that are winning big in squirrel, the out of state of coon hunting, they'd probably be 2, you know, the same. You know, like, and that's why I said, kind of like them, you know, I like them and I hate them. You know, it's one where I always looked at it too, as, you know, when I went to the hunts that you had this squirrel hunt and bench show and tree contest and coon hunt. If for some reason, if you just had a bad go in the daytime, right, well, maybe it would be better for you at night. So the opportunities was there and a little bit more shared. I mean, trust me, I'm like a lot of these guys, you know, I drive 12 hours and, you know, get unlucky and then have to go one go and drive 12 hours home.
Yep.
You know, it's a kind of a one or done. And I mean, with whether you have a great dog or an average dog, I mean, you know, a little bit of luck goes a long way, especially, I mean, squirrel hunting. You know, again, if they're on the outside or if you're seeing them or, you know, if your dog just gets out of a little pocket or, you know, I mean, competition, it probably one of them, you know, the explanation of, you know, the luck and stuff like that. The two-toe Joe dog, like I said, you know, I'd hauled him a lot, won a ton with him, but I mean, he was just a consistent dog. My friend from Louisiana had moved up just about 30 miles from me, and I gave him a pup out of Two-Toe Joe. Her name was Josie, and we hunted for 2 years together, and Josie never treated a coon in front of Joe for 2 years. We went down to the Arkansas State hunt, and normally this is how it goes, right? You haul 8-9 hours, and you draw with the person you rode with.
Yeah.
But we drew together, and we drew a guy from down there, and that female put a whooping on both of us. I mean, it was crazy, you know, like I said. And when we came home the following week, when we hunted together too, Joe treated every coon in front of her. I mean, I don't know what it is, but, you know, like I said, just because you see one thing once doesn't mean that some dogs haul good, some dogs don't. And, you know, I mean, we've had several of them, it didn't matter where you took them. And to me, the Bella female that I talked about was one of those. We took her down to Mississippi, and I mean, we waded in water waist deep the whole hunt. And the guy that I drew with, I mean, by then she had made her name. Everybody knew that, you know, Bella was for real. But the guy goes, man, I hate her. And I was like, dude, I don't know what she'll do. You know, I mean, we don't have this type of, you know, and it wasn't like I knew she'd cross a little ditch of water or creek, but I mean, the whole thing. But I mean, she looked like that she'd been hunting down there, you know, every day. And, you know, you'd take a lot of dogs, go down there, and they may not do nothing.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, a lot of it's a little bit of luck and where you go. And stuff. But
Stone Creek Hound Supply, a family-operated business, boasts over 50 years of involvement in hounds. For over 2 decades, they've been dedicated to supplying high-quality hound gear. Their reputation is founded on unparalleled quality and exceptional customer service. Crafted from U.S. source materials, Stone Creek clothing is meticulously manufactured right here in Pennsylvania. Through their commitment to excellence, many of their customers have become lifelong friends.
I mean, like I said, I've appreciated the sport. I've appreciated the people that's been involved in it. And I mean, again, I ain't gonna say I've agreed with everybody, but the people that I've even disagreed with, I've respected, and I've learned a lot even from those people. So,
oh yeah. I mean, no, I've had people on this podcast that I don't necessarily agree with, but I respect them and I appreciate their input, because guess what? At the end of the day, I can still learn something from them.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have to necessarily agree with them. Sometimes it's learning what not to do.
Well, and that's the thing. Well, my dad always said that you could always learn something from everybody.
Yeah.
And like what you just said, it may be something that I don't need to try that, or I don't need to do that, but even a lot of people, right? There's some good advice from everybody.
Yeah.
You just got to kind of learn what it is, and the trial and error, and again, there's people ask all the time, how do you train them? How do you do? There's I don't know, because every dog, right, isn't the same. There's the reason there's not a step-by-step book is the dogs don't follow it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They change it. And you just kind of got to learn. To me, especially you take over the last 10 years, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of people that have been into the hound, stuff like that, switch to the cur dogs. And some of it may just because, they don't want to give up hunting, but they don't want to go as far. They want a closer range dog or something like that. And, a lot of them, for some reason, have a hard time getting a cur dog to tree. And everybody asks me all the time, how do you fix that? And I told them, I said, I don't know. Never had that. I've been in it forever, and I've never had one that wouldn't tree, or that I couldn't get to tree.
Yeah.
So, normally that's a hard one for me. And, like I said, I just think the style and the expectations from them. And, a lot of if you've had a hound, especially if you've always had, long range dogs, and you get a cur dog, and, it's not going to a lot of times naturally go a mile, right? I mean, that's the ideal, to me, still today. I got a friend, I hunt with him all the time, and a 500-yard circle will cover more ground than a mile straight down the creek.
Yeah.
And tree you more coon. And I totally believe that. With me coon hunting, I mean, I want a dog that will go out, but I don't want them to start out, right? I mean, again, if there's a coon 50 foot from me, I want to breed a 50 foot coon, not horse race, a quarter mile, then go hunting. And I mean, that to me, that's probably one of the things I like about the cur dog that I want. And there's a lot of people they're used to doing it. I mean, I'm sure it's probably the same where you're at, and I know it is where I'm at. It's harder to do that now because I mean, a lot of the land is if a dog goes very far, you're not where you're supposed to be pretty easy. And I mean, the ideal is, and which especially today, my style of dog is probably different than it was when I was 20. I didn't mind walking up the mountains and going as far. And today, I would rather have a dog come back to me and drive and dump that mile. Go drive over that woods that's a mile away and dump. But I still want a good dog and a solid tree dog, and one that when he goes to somebody likes him. But I've always liked the dogs that I hunted, and I want them to like me, and I like going up and being with them and being out at night with them, and that's to me what you should strive for with any dog. So.
Definitely. Well, I know you've given us a couple little stories throughout here, but you got any good stories that just stand out that you really want that you'd want to tell us?
Probably hundreds of them, but I mean, it's, like I said, it got tons and tons of stories, and a lot of them, it's probably with, being able to hunt with friends, some of the stuff that happened. I mean, I've watched guys, I mean, we were going up a hill one night. I mean, it was ice. I'll tell you how bad it was. We'd fall so much, and everybody couldn't believe we was going, we probably had 3 inches of ice. The roads were kind of cleared. Well, we got in the field. Well, you couldn't even walk across a flat field. We'd lost, the clip twice out of the gun, and then we finally lost it totally. And the gun we had, you had to use a cornstalk to load the single shell. But I remember we had Joe and Roxy with us that night, and Roxy had treed up on a bluff. And I mean, it was pretty much straight up, and we got up about halfway. I mean, you're just limb to limb. Well, the two guys I was with, Jake and Kip, Kip slid down past Jake, and Jake grabbed him, but didn't hurt. Well, Jake basically was just hanging onto a little twig and slid down a little further. Kip had a hold of his boot. Well, Jake kicked him off of his boot, and Kip went all the way down the bottom of the hill. I mean, we got pictures. We've been far enough. One time we had the sheriff drive us home we got the cur dog in the back of the sheriff's car and went home. And some of my, favorite stories is probably always with my dad. I mean, when we go up there and camp, we tree, 80 to 100 coon in 3 or 4 nights, and would hunt all night long. And the forestries up there, they do all the brush or tree management, which makes it where you can't hardly walk through them.
Jeez.
We rustled through some brush and ended up getting, several coon, and we stopped to 10, and the dogs treed probably about 200 yards away from us, and you literally could run and crash into the briars and brush, and you couldn't go nowhere. And I told my dad just to stay there, and I went to the 2 dogs. Well, about 3/4 of the way to him, I came across a logging road. So when I got coon and the dogs, I came back. Well, so I went straight in, and that logging road basically made a big circle out of the woods around, and I came from the back side of him. And it just always amazed me what you see at night.
Yeah.
People always ask me, the difference between squirrel hunting and coon hunting. I can honestly tell you, I don't have very many good squirrel stories. I got a lot of good time squirrel hunting, but the list of things that happen at night and the things that you see and hear, and like I said, get an opportunity to do is numerous.
Definitely. No, I understand. It's definitely just different being out at night.
Yep. I mean, always the question, people probably ask you, have you ever scared at night? And it's like, I'm not afraid of the dark, but I'd like to if I wasn't scared. Probably, one of the stories, which, I don't know if you're around, the lyre dog, Roy Williams, owned the lyre dog.
Okay.
And John Raymond from Arkansas and Eddie Stevens from up north Missouri and his boys, they came down and hunted. Well, Roy, I was fairly new to this area and stuff, and Roy took us to a spot probably 30 miles south from where I live now in Ashland. And we drove down there, turned loose, treated a couple coon. When we was coming back, John had a dog, and he got to running thumping. I ain't gonna tell you what. I probably figured it out. So, I mean, we was on the gravel road, and I mean, you could shine the truck. Well, Roy was a little older, and Eddie's boy at the time was probably 8 or 9 years old. And I told Roy, I said, why don't you and Dalton just head to the truck? And I said, we'll go grab it, we'll go chase the dog down. And we'll meet you at the truck. So this is probably at 8:00 at night.
Mm-hmm.
At 4:30 in the morning, we made it back to the truck.
Oh, geez.
Well, we didn't. It didn't take us too long to catch the dog, but we went up, crossed the pasture, grabbed the dog, and we was walking back just to the deal when we came to the road. Well, of course, we're just telling stories and talking, going down the road, and pretty soon there's fields on both sides of it. And I was like, there was no fields on that road we came down on, and we let John make two decisions. He goes, well, we just need to cut across this pasture, and we walked for about another 2 hours. And I said, we at least need to pick a direction. Well, we let him pick the direction, and we ended up as far away as we could. And I mean, luckily that Roy had something to build a fire with, because we did give the keys to the truck.
Oh, geez.
We couldn't come find us either. And, that was back before the cell phone times. And,
yeah.
But John Raybon, he told everybody that, I got him lost. And I told him, I said, to this date, I still have never been lost, because I didn't have to stay in the woods. I always got home. Yeah. So, as I can, so, I mean, that's my always definition of getting lost. For the 35, 40 years I've coon hunted, I have always got home before I had to sleep in the woods to get home. So.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time tonight to talk to me. Like I said, if you got anything else, I don't want to cut you off, but I mean, I don't want to keep you on here.
No, I rambled enough, and like I said, I'd probably think of some better stories than what I told for sure. But I'm sure a lot of people have heard them if I've been around them. But like I said, I appreciate you taking the time and listening to me, and always appreciate everybody. So
thank you very much. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Tree Talking Media. And until next time, keep them talking in the timber.